What would happen if a piece of land priced no higher than a used car could offer you not just a place to live, but an entirely different path in life? This isn't a vague pitch or a polished scam wrapped in grand promises. These are real countries with residency and naturalization programs clearly written into law, just rarely discussed in everyday conversations. This video isn't about real estate as an investment, nor is it an invitation to chase fast profits. What we're exploring are places where land remains affordable enough for ordinary people, places where legal residency is attainable, where staying long-term is possible, and where citizenship can become an option if you truly choose to commit. Choices like these force many people to pause and ask why they remain trapped in cities that grow more expensive every year, where rent consumes most of their income. While elsewhere, the same money can buy land stability and far more control over daily life. There is, however, an important reality that often goes unmentioned. These doors are not guaranteed to stay open. Immigration laws evolve, land prices rise, and what feels reachable today can quickly move out of reach tomorrow, not because anyone is hiding the truth, but because systems change as the world moves forward. This video makes no promises and applies no pressure. It simply clarifies which options still exist, which countries genuinely allow people to arrive, stay, and build a life legally and sustainably. And if you're not searching for perfection, but for a place that feels easier to breathe than where you are now, this journey may be for you. Country. 5. Colombia. Colombia once carried a reputation that made many people hesitate. For years, its name was associated with instability, violence, and risk. But that picture has shifted profoundly. Today, Colombia is no longer a scary country. It is increasingly a place where quality of life clearly outweighs the cost of living, especially for those looking for a meaningful reset with real social depth. When it comes to land, Colombia remains grounded in reality. In many rural and semi-rural areas, prices range from roughly $1,000 to $4,000 per acre. These figures are not shocking or artificially rare, but they are low enough to be accessible without putting your entire financial future at risk. More importantly, land here is tied to real-life housing, agriculture, community, not just a speculative asset sitting on paper. The residency pathway is relatively straightforward. Colombia's investor visa sits at a moderate threshold designed for ordinary investors rather than the ultra-wealthy. It allows foreigners to establish legal presence step by step. After about 5 years of continuous residency, citizenship becomes an option. It's not fast, but it is transparent, clear enough for people to plan long-term without feeling misled. Colombia's greatest strength lies in urban livability. Cities like Medellin, Bogotá, and several mid-sized urban centers have reached a level where daily life simply works. Public transport exists, cultural spaces are active, social life is vibrant, and yet living costs remain manageable. You don't have to sacrifice quality of life just to reduce expenses. Climate is another quiet advantage. Many Colombian cities sit at higher elevations, offering spring-like temperatures year-round. Not too hot, not too cold. This consistency doesn't just improve physical comfort, it supports a calmer rhythm of life, reducing stress compared to environments with extreme weather. Healthcare is a frequently underestimated asset. Colombia operates a hybrid public-private medical system that functions efficiently by regional standards. Private clinics and hospitals offer reasonable prices, short wait times, and solid professional standards. For many people, this creates a crucial sense of security. Healthcare is accessible without turning every doctor's visit into a financial crisis. Another rapidly evolving factor is the expat community. As more foreigners arrive, support networks, co-working spaces, and cultural exchanges have grown. Colombia is no longer a place where newcomers must navigate everything alone. At the same time, its local identity remains strong enough that life here still feels authentic, not like an isolated expat bubble. Of course, Colombia is not for everyone. If you need absolute predictability, dislike change, or feel uncomfortable in societies still in transition, this country may feel unstable. Colombia is still developing, and that growth comes with moments of uncertainty. But if you value social life, human connection, and an environment dynamic enough to rebuild routines and relationships, Colombia offers something rare, the sense that you can start over without falling behind. Colombia is not perfect, but it is good enough to begin again. Country. Georgia. Georgia is not a country that appears loudly on global migration maps. It isn't heavily promoted, and it doesn't come wrapped in grand promises. Yet that quiet presence is exactly why Georgia works so well as a closing point in this journey. This is a place where the system does not try to manage your life, but largely steps back and lets you decide. When it comes to land, Georgia remains accessible. In many areas outside the main centers, land prices range roughly from $1,000 to $5,000 per acre. These are not prices designed for quick speculation, but they are low enough for ordinary people to consider settling without taking on long-term financial strain. Because international speculation is still limited, prices remain grounded and relatively realistic. What truly sets Georgia apart is its residency approach. Policies are open, procedures are simple, and questions are minimal. You are not asked to present elaborate long-term plans or justify your presence in excessive detail. Meeting basic requirements allows you to live legally with very little ongoing interference. Few places today offer residency without the feeling of constant oversight. The value Georgia offers becomes most visible in everyday life. The cost of living is low compared to Europe, especially when it comes to housing, food, and basic services. Maintaining a stable lifestyle does not require constant budget adjustments. Money here feels functional. It supports daily life rather than being slowly drained by hidden costs. Healthcare is another understated strength. Georgia's private healthcare sector has expanded rapidly, offering affordable treatment, short waiting times, and services that meet everyday medical needs. Clinics operate efficiently and flexibly, giving residents confidence that they can manage their health independently without relying on a heavy state support system. That independence, however, is also the trade-off. Georgia is not ideal for those who depend on strong social welfare systems, extensive public benefits, or highly structured government support. Much of the responsibility rests with the individual, and that requires self-reliance. But for people who value autonomy, who are comfortable managing their own affairs, and who prefer a system with fewer procedures and fewer questions, Georgia offers something increasingly rare: the freedom to live on your own terms with low costs and a system light enough not to stand in your way. Country. 3. Paraguay. Paraguay is not the cheapest country in the world, nor is it a place that immediately dazzles you the first time you hear its name. And that is precisely why it becomes such a meaningful starting point. Paraguay does not attract people with promises of quick wealth, but with something far rarer today: a residency system that is simple, transparent, and largely free of judgment. The reason Paraguay appears first on this list has little to do with numbers and everything to do with mindset. Here, you are not required to prove that you are exceptional, nor are you expected to convince the system that you will bring extraordinary value to the country. The question asked is surprisingly basic: do you intend to live here legally, stably, and long-term? Within that context, land plays a supporting role rather than the spotlight. In rural areas, land prices still range from just a few hundred to a few $1,000s per hectare. These are not hot properties aggressively marketed for fast returns. Paraguay does not encourage speculation or accumulation. Ownership, if you choose it, simply signals real presence, not short-term opportunism. The residency pathway in Paraguay is known for its directness. Requirements are clear, procedures are streamlined, and there are no symbolic hoops to jump through. Once you meet the basic conditions and reside legally, permanent residency follows without navigating an exhausting or opaque system. The citizenship timeline is also relatively straightforward, with eligibility typically opening after about 3 years of legal residence. What Paraguay truly offers, however, is not found on official documents. It is the feeling of not being constantly scrutinized. You are not repeatedly asked to justify who you are or why you deserve to stay. The system treats you as someone who has come to live, not as a subject of suspicion. Of course, Paraguay is not for everyone. If you rely on high-end infrastructure, fast-paced services, and an intense urban rhythm, this country may feel slow or underdeveloped. But if you are looking for a quieter environment, less daily pressure, and a system that allows you to exist without constant friction, Paraguay is worth considering. Paraguay does not promise wealth. It promises just one thing: peace of mind. Country: Mexico. Mexico appears on this list not because it promises fast citizenship, nor because it turns land into a magic ticket. Its core value lies in something far more practical: the ability to live with geographic flexibility inside a system that allows movement adjustment and day-to-day stability without locking you into a single, irreversible choice. In Mexico, land and housing are not mandatory gateways into residency. Outside major cities and famous tourist hubs, property prices drop quickly. In smaller towns and rural areas, land can range from a few hundred to a few $1,000s per acre. This is not because these places lack value, but because they have not been inflated by speculation or international pressure. Ownership is an option, not a requirement, and residency does not depend on it. What truly sets Mexico apart is how it separates real estate from legal status. Permanent residency is not a reward for buying property, but the result of demonstrating that you can sustain yourself independently. The pathway is clear and well-defined, but it is not fast. This system does not favor impatience. It favors those willing to move step by step, understanding that stability is built over time, not granted instantly. The real value Mexico offers is balance. You remain close to the United States, close enough to maintain personal ties, professional connections, and family access, while living in an environment with lower costs and less constant pressure. From housing to food to everyday services, your money feels like it is being used to live, not merely to survive. Healthcare is another critical factor. Mexico is not perfect, but it is accessible. A minor health issue does not automatically become a financial crisis. With private clinics, regional hospitals, and a wide network of medical professionals, the system provides a level of reassurance that many people have lived without for far too long. That said, Mexico is not for everyone. If you expect everything to run automatically, quickly, and strictly by fixed rules, the system here may test your patience. Mexico requires initiative, communication, and adaptability. In return, it offers something increasingly rare: the space to shape your life on your own terms, rather than being forced into a predefined path. Mexico does not give you shortcuts, but it gives you room to breathe. Country: 1. Philippines. The Philippines does not appear on this list because it allows foreigners to easily buy land. In fact, direct land ownership is not permitted. But that apparent limitation highlights the country's real value: not ownership, but the right to stay long-term and live with ease. In the Philippines, instead of buying land, many people choose long-term leases or legally structured arrangements to own buildings on leased land. When converted to equivalent land, Costs these arrangements typically fall between a few hundred and a few $1,000s per acre. What matters here is not size, but the absence of heavy financial pressure just to remain legally present. The cornerstone of the Philippines' appeal is its residency policy. Through the SRV program, foreigners, especially retirees, can obtain permanent residency almost immediately. There is no multi-year waiting period and no constant cycle of renewals that leaves people feeling uncertain. You enter the system as someone allowed to stay, not as a temporary guest. The value delivered to residents is practical and immediate. First is language. English is widely used across daily life, healthcare administration, and education. This removes one of the biggest barriers to living abroad: isolation caused by communication gaps. Here you can understand and be understood from the very beginning. Low living costs are another major advantage. Housing, food, personal services, and basic healthcare remain accessible. You don't need to track every small expense. Your money is used to live comfortably, not just to make it through the month. Ease of integration is what keeps many people longer than they initially planned. Filipino culture is open, warm, and community-oriented. Foreigners are not treated as permanent outsiders. Building friendships, routines, and a sense of belonging happens naturally, especially for those seeking a slower pace of life, centered on people rather than pressure. Of course, the Philippines is not for everyone. If you require absolute land ownership rights or prefer rigid Western-style legal certainty, this environment may feel less secure. Tropical weather, uneven infrastructure, and a slower rhythm of life also require adjustment. But if what you're looking for is not a title deed, but uninterrupted time, a place where you can stay, legally communicate easily, and live at a much lower cost than you're used to, the Philippines offers something rare. The Philippines does not give you the right to own land, but it gives you the right to stay. When you look back at the entire journey, one thing becomes very clear: none of the countries in this list are perfect. Each has its own limits, and every system comes with trade-offs. What they share is not perfection, but the fact that they give people the right to choose, rather than forcing them to simply endure. In some places, you trade convenience for peace. In others, you slow down in exchange for space to breathe, to think, to reset. And there are countries that do not promise wealth or rapid success, but instead offer something increasingly rare in today's world: the feeling that life is no longer a constant escape. This video was not made to push you to leave where you are, nor to convince you to change your life overnight. It exists to remind you that other options do exist, and sometimes just knowing that you have a choice is enough to make the present feel lighter. If one country in this list made you pause and think, leave its name in the comments. No explanation is needed. Every choice carries its own story. And if you want to keep exploring places where life moves more slowly, feels more grounded, and allows you to breathe a little easier, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. We don't promise the right answer for everyone. We simply help you see the paths that are still open, so when the time comes, you know you're not trapped.